Hi, my name is Amanda Rocha. I am an estate planning and probate attorney in California, and today I want to talk to you about why you should have a joint trust when you have a spouse. Before I get into that, I want to leave you my contact information. You can find me on my website, www.amandarocalaw.com. You can comment down below if this platform allows you to do that, or you can find me on social media at Amanda Rocha Law. The reason I am talking to you about this today is because I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day who contacted me about creating an estate plan. Our conversation was basically about the fact that one of the spouses owned a significant amount of property as separate property, and the other spouse did not. This person was concerned that if they were to create a joint account, then all of that property would become community property or would then be passed along to their spouse at death as opposed to their child. So we had to kind of get into the whole what is community property and separate property conversation. And if you are interested in an in-depth talk about that, you can find a podcast that I've created about it called Community Property, or a YouTube video, or you can find it on my website. I have blogs about it. But basically, community property in California is property owned between the two spouses, and separate property is property not owned between the two spouses. It's your separate property. So I had to explain to her that the spouse who owned the property, as long as it stayed stayed separate property in nature throughout their marriage, then that would remain separate property regardless of whether it was put in a joint trust. If you want to transfer property from your separate property into your community property or vice versa, it's possible. You can do that. You can sign documents that are known as transmutation agreements, and you can do that for any kind of property as long as you own that property. However, just putting it in a trust does not change the nature of the property and how it's held. What could happen, though, is if you do not have the proper planning techniques and proper clauses, then the property could be held in trust by your spouse when you've passed away, and they would be the sole trustee and be able to determine if they want to change the beneficiaries. So we can make it to where the beneficiary listed cannot be changed once you've passed away and you are incapacitated and no longer the actual trustee of your own trust. So there's an easy way to do that. The point that I wanted to make to my potential client and to you, though, is she was concerned that if they did if they didn't do a joint trust, or she wasn't concerned. What she said was, if we do not do a joint trust, I will just make it to where we amend it later to where our two trusts, or the one spouse who had the property, the separate trust, the separate property, they would just add the other person to their trust later on. That can't be done. You can add beneficiaries, you can take beneficiaries away, you can change the property in your trust, but you can't go from a singular person trust to a joint trust in the same document. You have to either create a separate trust completely or destroy that trust and create like a replacement. It's possible that you have multiple trusts, and that's totally fine, but it would not save you money to do it that way. It would save you money to have a joint trust up front and then keep property however you want it in whatever nature and transmute it later if you want to do that, add property to it later, and just make sure that you have the separate property set up in the way that you want it to be set up. There's no point in spending the money to create a separate trust if you're married just to protect the nature of the property. That's not necessary. And again, if you want to add them on later, it'll cost basically just as much money as it did the first time. So it's really worth it to just do a joint trust up front. Make sure you go with a lawyer who knows what they're doing, and it isn't just a form that you download on a website, because that can't possibly be enough for a trust that is complicated like this. If you're in a similar situation or you have any questions, please contact me. You can find me through my website, www.amandarochala.com. You can comment down below if you want to, or you can find me through my social media accounts at Amanda Rocha Law. Thank you.